guys, welcome back to Bio 112 Online, your home for biology education. Today's topic is going to be the immune system. So when we say immune system, what we really mean is an animal's system of defenses against pathogens. And this will constitute everything from the cells that are responsible for taking down organisms trying to get inside of you, in addition to all the barriers and other defenses that your body has to try and combat organisms. And these organisms that we're talking about, the pathogens, can be defined as any type of infectious agent that's trying to cause disease. By pathogens, we mean microorganisms such as bacteria and viruses, but we're also referring to other organisms such as protists, fungi, or even small animals that might be trying to parasitize the body. For any of this vast array of organisms, we have an equally vast array of different types of cells that would be used to combat these invaders. These include cells such as the dendritic cells, the macrophages, the T cells, the B cells. We can break this large number of cells and functions into two main general units. The first of these is referred to as the innate immune system. The innate immune system is going to be a system of defenses that are active immediately and are not generally geared towards one specific pathogen. The innate immune system is found in all animals. It has non-specific responses towards pathogens. However, it can recognize varying large subsets of pathogens. So you'll have specific defenses that might target viruses in general, or bacteria in general, or fungi in general, but not geared towards one specific strain of any one of those groups. These forms of defenses are generally active all the time or can be induced very rapidly, and therefore are active pretty much immediately upon infection. These responses are going to be the same whether or not you've actually encountered this pathogen before, and will include everything from the internal cellular defenses to the external barriers that prevent those organisms from getting inside your body. The second of these is the acquired immune system. The acquired immune system is going to be a system of defenses that are slow to develop, but are able to detect and target a specific type of pathogen. For the acquired immunity, this is only going to be found in vertebrates. It contains specific memory cells that can go through and recognize self from non-self, pathogen from non-pathogen. However, for this very specific and highly efficient form of immunity, it ends up having a slower initial response to first exposure to a given pathogen. However, on second or third or multiple exposures to that pathogen, then the immune system gets geared up and can combat those pathogens much more quickly and efficiently. This includes two main frames of the acquired immunity, including the humoral defenses, which involve antibodies which are produced and sent out into the blood, and also cell-mediated responses, in which specialized cells go through and target the pathogens where they may be hiding. For today, we're going to focus on the innate immunity, and we'll save the acquired immunity for the next video. For the innate immunity, this first is constituted by physical barriers, such as your skin. That skin will go through and prevent organisms externally from making their way inside. In addition, all of the internal surfaces of the body that come in contact with materials from outside the body generally have some additional feature of defense. These include things like the mucous membranes. The mucous membranes are going to line the digestive, respiratory, urinary, and reproductive tracts and are set up to trap microbes and prevent them from becoming a problem. The body also produces a number of secretions to help out with these barriers. Within the mucous membranes, you also have this form of mucus, which ends up being this very thick, viscous liquid that can trap microbes, and then the associated cilia, which can move the material containing the microbes and associated pathogens away from sensitive areas and to areas where they can be dealt with. In addition, you have, covering many of the surfaces of your skin, an enzyme referred to as lysozyme. As the name would suggest, the lyso means to lyse or to break, and zyme meaning enzyme, which basically is an enzyme that will destroy bacterial cell walls. This is found within the mucus, within sweat, within tears and saliva, and is responsible for destroying microbes that may get onto the surface of your body. Also importantly is the acidity within your stomach. Much of the material that's trapped within the mucus gets brought down into the digestive system, where it is exposed to the harsh acids of the stomach, which is enough to kill off many types of bacteria. Beyond simply the physical barrier defenses, you have a number of cellular defenses that will be responsible for maintaining your health and preventing pathogens from getting a foothold. Within the innate immune system, this is going to include many cells that we have heard of before, such as the white blood cells. We can break the white blood cells up into 5 main groups. The first and most common of these is the neutrophils. The neutrophils move around the body within the bloodstream and constitute 70 to 80% of the white blood cells you have at any given time. These can be recruited to areas that are undergoing active infections, where they can leave the bloodstream and then go engage the invaders or the pathogens. A second type of white blood cell is the eosinophils. The eosinophils are going to be white blood cells that specialize on engaging parasites. Basically, what they'll do is settle up right next to one of those parasites and then start leaking out acids and other forms of toxic compounds to help break down and kill those parasites and pathogens. Another common type is going to be the basophils. The basophils are going to be cells that are found within the bloodstream that have the ability to send out regulatory signals to alert the body in the case of an infection. They end up being the alarm messengers of the body. The next type is going to be the lymphocytes. The lymphocytes can sometimes be found in the blood, but are more likely, as the name suggests, found in the lymphatic system. These include the B cells and the T cells, which are the prime components of the acquired immunity system. So we'll be covering those a bit more in the next video. The last group we want to talk about is going to be the monocytes. Monocytes emerge within the blood and will circulate around, but at some point they generally leave the blood and enter the other tissues of the body, where they become another cell type that we refer to as macrophages. A few other types of cells that don't quite fit the mold for being white blood cells, but are still active within the innate immune system, are going to be the natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are going to be derived from lymphocytes and are responsible for attacking cells that are infected with viruses. Essentially, what these cells will do is they will go from cell to cell to cell, looking for a series of cues that the cells that they're checking have become invaded by either bacteria or viruses. If they find signals that indeed those cells have been invaded by viruses, then they will go through and release cytotoxic compounds that will either lyse or kill the infected cell. These natural killer cells, or NK cells, are also very important in fighting tumors. Beyond the cellular defenses, The innate immune system is also home to a number of chemical defenses. The first of these is referred to as the complement system and is a series of proteins that are found within the blood plasma that work together with antibodies to help fight infections. The complement system is going to be a group of these proteins that fight infections through three main pathways. The first of which is to go through land on pathogens such as bacteria, and then delve into those bacteria, specifically into the membrane, forming extra pores. These extra pores can then go through and exchange ions and water with the bacteria, causing that bacteria to lose the ability to do cellular respiration and do many other types of osmoregulation, leading to the death of that bacteria. A second way in which the complement proteins will work is by initiating the inflammatory response. Finally, they can go through the process of opsonizing pathogens. Opsonizing pathogens is a process that increases the susceptibility of those pathogens to being consumed by phagocytic cells. Another type of chemical defense in the innate immune system is the use of interferons. Interferons are going to be proteins that are produced by virus-infected cells that will alert neighboring cells and reduce the susceptibility of those neighboring cells to infection. So basically the way this works, if a cell was infected by a virus, then that infected cell will release its interferons. Those interferons will go to the neighboring cells such that when the original cell lyses and releases its viruses, those cells that have received the signal from the interferons will not admit the viruses or will have defenses that will break down the DNA and RNA that the viruses inject. There's a variety of other ways in which the body will also go through and defend against pathogens. The first of these is through the use of what we referred to before as phagocytic cells. These are cells that, as the name would suggest, undergoes phagocytosis, or the act of cell eating. These are cells that can detect and then consume pathogenic organisms. The three main types that we'll deal with today are referred to as the dendritic cells, which are generally found within specific types of tissues. The second of these are going to be the macrophages, which started off as monocytes and then moved their way into the tissues as a way of patrolling those tissues to avoid influx of microorganisms. And finally, the neutrophils, which we said are the most common types of white blood cells, which again can leave the blood and enter tissues. So for one of these phagocytic cells, when they come along on their general patrols and they come in contact with some type of bacteria or other pathogen, they'll first need to detect it. The way in which they detect it is through the use of toll-like receptors. Toll-like receptors will come in contact and will recognize specific characteristics of the pathogen. Once they do so, they will form a dimer and then will institute a number of responses within that macrophage. For those toll-like receptors, they are found all throughout vertebrates and have will have the ability to recognize bacterial or viral components. This could include things like lipid polysaccharides, peptidoglycans, lipopeptides, bacterial DNA, double-stranded viral RNA. Now, in doing so, they're not targeting a specific strain of bacteria or a specific strain of virus. They're just looking for things that look vaguely bacteria-ish or things that look vaguely virus-ish. Once they are activated, they will first initiate phagocytosis, or the consumption of that particle that they just ate. The second thing they'll do is induce the immune response through the use of inflammatory cytokines and start releasing interferons. Once that bacteria is ingested by a phagocytic cell, The vesicle containing the bacteria will meet up with a lysosome. That lysosome will then break down that bacteria, and then the contents will then be expelled from that phagocytic cell. Those contents can then be exported to the extracellular matrix, where other cells can encounter those on their toll-like receptors and further raise the alarm. But not all the material is fully released. Some of it will remain on those phagocytic cells attached to the major histocompatibility class 2 receptors. The MHC2 receptors will be a display of the materials that phagocytic cell has consumed. This will be critical when we get to the next step of the acquired immune system. So, we have these phagocytic cells. They've encountered some type of pathogen. The next response is gearing up the body to fight that pathogen. The key way that your body does that is through the inflammatory response. The inflammatory response is going to be a localized innate immune response to injury or infection. So if we imagine you have some type of tissue, such as your skin, that is undergoing its normal activities, we're going to introduce 2 additional cells. The first of these is going to be the mast cells, and the second of these is going to be the dendritic cells. The mast cells are going to be located within connective tissue and will release histamine when that tissue is injured or when they detect signs of an infection. The second group of cells we want to talk about were the dendritic cells. The dendritic cells, as we said before, are phagocytic cells that are present in the skin and other tissues, and they will help first begin to consume those invading organisms, and second, will stimulate the immune response by raising the alarm. So imagine for a second, we have that same tissue we're just considering that has now become damaged due to some type of lesion, some type of abrasion, or some type of small cut. In any of these cases, that damaged tissue will now go through and need to repair itself and to fight off the invasion. Let's imagine we have these bacteria that were previously on the outside, and they're going to engage in what we refer to as a facultative pathogen. A pathogen that wouldn't normally be harmful to you, but give it the right circumstances, it'll do the job. As those bacteria then begin to grow and populate the wound, the presence of those pathogens now is detected by the dendritic and mast cells. The dendritic and mast cells will then initiate the inflammatory response through chemical cues. In the case of the mast cells, these chemical cues are going to be histamines, which triggers vasodilation or opening of blood vessels in the area. This increases blood flow to the area. In addition, it starts to cause those blood vessels to increase their permeability, to start to break some of those tight junctions between cells and allow more of the fluid from the blood to enter that tissue. In addition, macrophages and dendritic cells will begin to release cytokines. Cytokines will further increase the flow of blood in that area to help flush out the wound. In addition, they will begin to attract neutrophils or white blood cells to enter the area to help attack those invading bacteria. So as you have that wound, you then have histamine and cytokines that are being produced by the mast cells and the dendritic cells. This begins to attract other cells such as macrophages and neutrophils to the area. On the inflammatory response, it results in first the dilation of the blood vessels near the point of the infection. Second, it enhances the infiltration of white blood cells. And third, it aids in the pathogen destruction and tissue repair. So one of the first things that happens is additional fluids flowing in from the bloodstream. In addition, phagocytic cells are then attracted to the area to begin consuming the pathogen. As a greater and greater number of those phagocytic cells arrive, they can effectively deal with some of those pathogens by consuming them and by further raising the alarm. That works for a local level, and you experience that every time you see the redness around a pimple or around a paper cut. For larger scale infections, we may see larger systemic conditions that begin to emerge. One of the body's responses to the increase in cytokines is going to be the increase in body temperature above the set point to help create conditions that the pathogens won't deal well with. We tend to refer to this as a fever. Another response is the increased production of white blood cells by the body to help create additional phagocytic cells to help fight the infection. At the small scale, these can be effective ways that the body can use to reduce and remove pathogens from the body. However, if those symptoms that are produced as part of the body's immune response get out of hand, they can result in conditions such as septic shock. Septic shock occurs when the temperature gets too high or other parts of homeostasis are thrown off by the infection, leading to major health conditions and in some cases organ failure and death. So while this innate immune system is tremendously effective at attacking pathogens, it does run into two distinct problems. The first of which is some types of bacteria have figured out ways to avoid the innate immune response. They have jelly coats around their cell walls to avoid detection. They will hide inside of the human cells to escape the phagocytic cells. In other cases, they can actually survive the lysosome. And so while the phagocytic cell will take that bacteria in and expose it to the lysosome, the bacteria can emerge unscathed. That creates a problem. And the second problem is more of an evolutionary one. Recall that bacteria are evolving at a very much faster rate than humans are because their generation time is so much shorter, on the order of minutes to hours as opposed to us for decades. That puts them at a distinct advantage from the Red Queen principle. So how does the human body cope with this? How can it evolve at the same rate that these bacteria do? This is where we come into the acquired immunity. The acquired immunity is going to be a form of immune cells that evolve very rapidly in response to new pathogens. But that is a topic for another video. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you later. Hey guys, welcome to Bio 112 Online, your home for biology education. Today's episode brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
Hey, no Raid Shadow Legends.
What do you mean Raid Shadow Legends didn't go?
Through.
What about Brightly?
No Brightly either.
No Brightly either, huh?
No.
Great Courses Plus?
They laughed and hung up.
What do you mean they laughed and hung up? Well, who did you get? Dollar Shave Club? No.